I think it's just a different way of reaching customers. I think it's just fun, and shopping should be fun. So I don't think it's scary. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it. And I think they're they're on YouTube, they're playing games, they're on TikTok. They are not going through those traditional channels.
Have you ever wondered why some brands grow exponentially, building legions of passionate fans that live and die by their logos, and some, well, don't? I do, all the time, and that's probably because I'm a massive brand nerd, but I believe there's a secret sauce at the core of every remarkable brand, a formula that sparks the growth of passionate communities of superfans, building a business and a reputation that will last for years to come. In this podcast, we tap into the greatest marketing minds in the world as they share the exact tactics and strategies used to build the world's greatest brands, dropping actionable insights every brand builder can apply. My name is Paul Archer, and I'm a specialist in brand advocacy and word of mouth, having consulted for hundreds of brands on a topic. Co-hosting with me is the wonderful Verity Hurd, expert on the bleeding edge of social media. It's time to learn and build brand advocacy.
Hello, welcome to Building Brand Advocacy. My name is Paul Archer. I'm your host, and I am joined by the spectacularly wonderful Raine Peake. Raine, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Raine's at CV. So currently you are the head of marketing and customer growth at New Look, which is a great British brand for any of the US listeners here. But previously you were the digital director at Jigsaw, digital director at Mint Velvet, and customer director at Arcadia Group and Topshop, where we actually first met.
We did, in lockdown.
In lockdown, that was wild. About 5 weeks before it all went south, I think,
Yeah.
for those guys. It was fun. And we're going to dig into quite a few different things at the moment. I'm really interested in actually some of your learnings that you've been going through around the idea of investing in brand and bringing it back, because we're all about brand and reputation and what does it mean? But does that mean big out-of-home billboards? Does that mean communities of customers? Does that mean store? You guys have shifted it at New Look and made some investments. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we've got 400 stores, so we're national, so it's a really big brand. So what we've done is we've had a focus area in Manchester and really tried to do lots of different things that are brand building. Some things are really obvious, like out of home, taxis. Those things are kind of, what you would expect. We've also refitted stores, which I know is a really simple thing. We have, not so simple when you've got a lot, but, you would think common sense. We've invested in all of our store colleagues and really invested in visual merchandising and all of those things. So they are much more within the brand journey. So when they're speaking to customers, they're more enthusiastic, know more about the product. And then we've backed that up with upweighted influencer marketing, local influencers, community. We have a community of New Lookers, which are based in store and they create content and, are kind of local focused. And then we've sort of underpinned that with PPC and meta advertising in a local area.
Well, I mean,
it's quite a big thing, but it's in quite a confined space.
And is it working?
Yeah, it's really working. The main metric that we wanted to shift was footfall. So we wanted to have store footfall, and that's quite unusual for us because we really look at kind of the P&L of online and the P&L of the stores, and we don't necessarily mix them up. So to have online sort of traffic generators forcing people into, not forcing, obviously, it's voluntary, but encouraging people to go to store is quite a different thing for us. And that's what the criteria is measured on, was actually the footfalls, because we know when you go in store, there's a much higher conversion rate.
So how do you know which one's working? Because there's a lot going on there. So it's okay, if we do a lot of marketing in this area, it's going to increase footfall. But which of those levers that you're putting on is the one that's having the most effect?
That would be a bit of a grey area, I would suggest. We did do incrementality studies on Google. We've done a sort of testing of this algorithm called PMax for store goals, which is a footfall tracker. So we proved that worked in a test area. We also have test stores, and you have control stores and the actual stores, but a bit murky, I would say, but it's working. But I kind of think that's good, right? People are talking about us, people are excited, everybody's saying, "Oh, look what New Look are doing." So it's a combination of all of those things as opposed to one thing in isolation.
Which one do you think is the most counterintuitive thing that's having an effect, in your opinion?
I think it's the store piece, and I think it's that I really think people are very fond of New Look as a brand. And I think when they can kind of see something happening, then we've got like really great CRM programs. We've got local marketing around each of those stores. When we're telling them that there's new things arriving, we're telling them there's, a refit. I think that's just people feel very sort of positive towards it.
That makes a lot of sense. And then actually, when you're kind of organizing your team around trying to make this work, like, is there anything you're doing about sort of shifting different roles, and how are you kind of bringing together? You mentioned, different teams there. You've got the sort of PR, you've got the media buy team, you've got the affiliates team. You must have the social and the influencers. Like, actually, how are you uniting them around this sort of common goal of like, let's make New Look big in Manchester?
This is something quite new for us. We've changed it to have a team that's focused around a problem. So very much like how product teams work in the digital space in tech, we have focused them around the problem of we want more footfall in Manchester. So we have almost seconded, but not really, because it's everybody from all of those specific teams that you just said, and they form this kind of Manchester super team, and they are, they're really collaborative. They go up to Manchester, they have weekly meetings and everything. And it's that in itself has actually been brilliant, kind of focusing around a problem rather than focusing around the area of the business that you work in. So all of those teams that you mentioned that were quite obvious. We've also had in there things like branch planning. We've reviewed all the stock packages. We've kind of changed all of those things. So it's kind of really gone across the whole sort of business, as opposed to just going to do a Facebook ad and we're going to cover that taxi with like a New Look print.
That's quite cool. There's a movement in tech around building things of squads where you bring these multifaceted different engineers, product people, testers, loads of different elements that would be around it, and just focus them on one objective. And I'd love to sort of see that coming out. Do you call it a squad internally?
And we've got executive sponsorship from the retail director and the customer director. And the customer director is particularly keen on squads. So we really wanted to kind of form that team, as you said.
And so all of these people have their own managers, their own line management, or own teams, but they come together as part of this squad. Yeah. Is it entirely all their role at the moment? They're just focusing on it, or this is they're on 20% of their times on the squad work?
25% of the time, probably.
Cool. Right.
It's quite intense.
And any learnings as well that you've kind of taken on from this that you didn't know previously?
That squad mentality, I think, has really worked within the business. And I think that's really got people thinking about how they work. I think that's a really different way of working. I think the testing and learning it's obviously always happened in kind of lots of different areas, but within a retail function, it's actually quite difficult because it's quite difficult to change stores. But testing like different product mixes, where the billboard is, can you make sure that billboard reaches that store? Can you have an influencer? All of those things I think have really helped in that kind of, that worked, that didn't, but it's actually okay because we learnt. And that sort of test and learn is more tricky, I would say, in traditional retail.
Nice. And are you able to track it? Because I know that you're big into this kind of this concept of offline to online retail. Like, how does that play into it?
So we have customer identification through email. So we identify around 80% of our store customers, which is high, because our store colleagues are incentivized to get email addresses. So then we can track them, so we can see we can see their journeys, and we look at our known and unknown customers and the movement between those two things. We have footfall trackers, and then we can kind of work out whether it's click and collect. 25% of our orders are click and collect, so we can follow those. The return patterns we can follow as well. So you can kind of see it, but you do need to know whether it's a omnichannel customer, which by definition is a to purchase customer. So it is a bit of a kind of an echo chamber of your high value customers. You're able to track more, but you can kind of look at all of those kind of different metrics to see all that.
So are you seeing people, they're going into the store to check out an item and then they're going online to buy it?
A combination of all of those things, I'd say. I think 90% of all online retail journeys, all retail journeys start online. So I think there's a lot of research online, and then they go into store. We have store stock on our site, all of those things, so they can see whether it's there.
How are you leaning into that from their online experience and crossing the bridge into it? I know you mentioned kind of click and collect, but like what's actually happening emotively when someone is on the New Look website, and what happens next, so you can actually capture them, inspire them, and then get them to make a purchase in store or online, I guess.
If we know them and we've got they're signed up for marketing, we will target them locally. We have all of our offers are totally omni. So any online offer you can redeem in store, and we have a QR code, and that encourages, I mean, literally the thing of just having the QR code on the email encourages the customer to go into store to scan it. Like, look, I've got it. Which I know is, it's not that obvious. We have, there's a lot of things around local marketing in terms of our New Lookers that I mentioned. So that's where we kind of put local information out. On the site, it's not as obvious. Mm-hmm. In fairness, I think there's a lot better job we can do about that. But we are mostly through kind of that sort of customer targeting. We have all of our known customer information goes through all of our retargeting on Google as well. So you kind of have the same information going through everything. So we can retarget you to, once we know what you've bought, we know what stores you've been in, we can target you to that store.
And so what are you finding in terms of, we talked about the team and how you structure the team around your squads and getting after Manchester as an opportunity. If you're looking more generally, you're looking at your online, your offline areas, what I'm starting to see a lot of brands is the world of performance, the world of affiliates, the world of social, world of PR. They're all becoming closer and closer together. Like, are you finding that with a New Look, and actually how are you building that team?
Now we've got paid and brand all together, paid, brand, affiliate, social. They're all under me. And I think, apart from the fact I'm a bit power crazed, but I think it'll mean that it's just a bit easier in terms of you'll have different KPIs and kind of all the same KPIs. And where we've got over 3 million followers on Instagram, it's big. So where that team were really tasked on reach and engagement, and the paid social team are targeted on conversion and lower funnel and all that kind of dirty area. Obviously, the secret is getting them to work together and getting using each channel differently for the best use of that channel. I think we were a bit guilty of using all the channels the same and expecting the same result, whereas now we've got this kind of more of a full funnel approach that we've kind of tested in Manchester, that we've kind of got green shoots of proving that work, that we can kind of actually be much more specific in terms of social is for reach, it's for engagement, it's for community. PPC is like, it's a last click, it's a shopping thing, it's a funnel. So we don't have to be the same for everything.
So let me play that back to make sure.
Oh, please, Ben.
Well, no, I love it. Just let me play that back so I get it. So previously it was almost like competing channels. It's just like, okay, you have 100 grand, you have 100 grand, you have 100 grand. How much can you make from that? Yeah. And now it's just like, how do you put them as part of a mix in a funnel? And you have this part of the funnel, you have this part of the funnel.
Yeah, and the metrics for the 100 grand were different. So the metrics for instance, influencers was reach, was a number of posts, was tone, of all of those things, which is very different from a conversion in a social setting. So I think if you bring them together and they kind of have joint results, it just will make it so much easier.
How do you measure reach as a channel? I mean, look, obviously the performance channel is dollars, right? But how are you actually measuring the brand vibe now that you actually have brand underneath you?
Yeah. So we work with Kantar. So we measure share, so we measure brand share, and we measure salience, and we ask the same questions all the time. So two of our key focuses are fashionability or trend and value for money. So those are two things that we religiously measure on a monthly basis. We have a 12-week look back window and we see whether those move. And then share of the market we measure as well to see whether that's going up or down. And we measure that by total, category, region, all of those different things.
Nice. What's the community look like at New Look?
In terms of?
in terms of your customer community, and how are you activating them to drive growth?
I think we've got a really passionate community, and I think everybody is very fond of New Look. If you speak to anybody about New Look, they're like, "Oh, it was my first Saturday job. My aunt worked there. My niece always buys all of her things." So I think everybody's really, really fond of it. I think we could do a more fun job of it, because I think sometimes we are a bit serious, and I think that comes across in the terms of where the teams have been separate. I think a lot of the social is really fun, it's really great, but we don't pulse that through the whole of New Look as much. I think our site is quite serious. I think there's no video in it, there's not as much UGC as potentially we would like, so I think those are kind of things to work on. I think from an offline point of view, I think there is a real community vibe to it. As I said, we have New Lookers, they are community based, they are based in stores. There's, a lot of them, and they're kind of local representatives for, for all of those different regions and stores. And we've got like tiny stores where it's, I don't know, 3 people work there and it's on a high street, and then we've got like things like the Trafford Centre, which are massive. So but those local community stores have a fantastic community engagement. They have really brilliant outreach with the community and stuff. So I think that's something we can definitely build on. I think it's, from a community point of view, I think it's actually, I don't think anybody's brilliant at it when you get down to a local level. And I think for somebody our scale, because we've got so many stores in high streets, I don't think anybody is particularly fantastic at doing any of those things. I think there's some brands that are doing a really good job of marketing at the moment. I know earlier we talked about Marks and Spencer's. I think they're doing a really great job and being fun and all of those things. But I think in terms of bringing the online and offline together and kind of getting that community, I don't think there's anybody that's particularly amazing, I would say. Yeah, it's massive. People buy from people, and it's, and they, your store. I live in a very small town in Surrey, and we had a Baby Gap. The manager in Baby Gap was this amazing woman. She was a school mum. She told every single mum in the playground when the special offers were coming, when the new stuff was going. I think she single-handedly kept that store open for about 2 years because she was so passionate about it and just engaged with everybody else. And I think that's kind of an amazing thing of how you can kind of empower those people.
I think there's tons of opportunity, and some brands are doing a job of it where they're trying to activate these store associates, but in a world where they're all hyper connected on social, if you're 20 years old or even 17 years old working at New Look, it's like all of our first jobs and stuff, working in retail, like those kids all have a social media presence. They're all connected to all their friends. They all follow each other at different schools within the town, and it's like a hyper local social engagement. But brands aren't really able to engage with it. To be fair, it is hard. Like, it's hard incentivizing them in the UK. It's all right if you just want to do the UK, but you can't really do it in all of Europe. And in the States, it's hard because you've got to do it state by state from a tax piece, giving product and stuff. But even so, they should be your number one advocate. They've got the product. They're in the store. They know how to tell the story. They should love the brand, and if you don't love the brand, then they probably shouldn't work there.
Our store colleagues are obviously our number one advocates. One of my favourite meetings every week is a Thursday morning 9:05 meeting, which is every territory leader, and they take it in turns to kind of talk about what's happening. They are so passionate, so engaged, really just care for the brand. This morning we launched Sale today, and there was this hilarious I want to say video. Is that the right term? Do I sound 300 by saying video? Anyway, the buying and merchandising team did a film about saying how many millions of units they had to sell this week, because the scale is massive. So they're like, we have to sell however many millions of shoes, tops, all of those things. And it was hilarious. And it was, but advocating to these like super fans and super advocates, it's a really powerful meeting, and it kind of really gets the energy from all of those kind of, I'm going to say frontline because they're dealing with the customers much more directly, gets kind of the sort of the excitement around the rest of the building, and everybody's kind of giles into that meeting with glee.
And often, I remember that being one of the things that, I don't know if we can cut this or not if it doesn't get approved, but I remember when we were chatting to Arcadia and Topshop, and we asked around the group who was wearing it, and not a single hand went up, and it was like, well, what's the discount that you give it? It's like 25%. It's like, well, anyone who was a student or a medical professional got 30%. So their own staff weren't even using it. It was like, if you haven't even got the advocacy from your own team, how can you imagine anyone else is going to do it? And how on earth are you going to expect to grow at this sort of rate. So I love that New York. I love that New Look are doing this. I'm going to change gears a little bit. I'm a massive nerd, so I like this stuff, right? Like this kind of conversion of fashion and gaming. It's a bit of a trend. We see, well, you've got obviously Twitch with people who are wearing things. We know Charlotte Tilbury are sort of leading the way with their kind of gamer channel and doing the makeup for gamers on there. Like, it's such a big playground with, I mean, all these different platforms, different tools. You've got Fortnite being one, and we've got loads of different games as a channel, and brands are starting to tap into this as an opportunity, as an advertising channel. Like last year, we had names such as Louis Vuitton, Coach, Tommy Hilfiger, Crocs, and Clarks, all with campaigns in gaming. Like, what are your thoughts on this? And like, how much have you dug into it?
I think it's super exciting, and I think you've got to go where your customer is. And if, I mean, I've always worked in women's wear, so I'm going to refer to her as a she. But if she's there, you kind of want to pop up there and you want to get her excited about it. And I think it's just a different way of reaching customers. And I think it's just fun, and shopping should be fun. So I don't think it's scary. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it. There's a lot of tech companies that are saying they're doing it really well, and they're saying, look, we've done this thing for this luxury brand, and you're like, that looks beautiful, but I'm not sure how we can scale it. So I think there's some challenges in terms of how you would actually execute it, but I think it's amazing for brand awareness. I think it's brilliant for the community spirit as well, and that community thing, and also, I mean, New Look is quite a young brand, and gaming traditionally is younger, but it's kind of like how you kind of garner that support from your community and how you kind of are present in that community, and just the fun bit.
Hey, it's me again. This podcast is sponsored by Duel, which is it's my company, actually. Duel is the leading brand advocacy platform used by the top retail consumer brands, including Unilever, Charlotte Tilbury, Elemis, Loop, and about 50 more, to manage, measure, and scale their advocacy, member, affiliate, creator, and brand ambassador operations. The platform offers unparalleled scale for complex brands by automating 9 out of 10 of the standard advocacy management activities and allowing them to focus on arming their advocates with the right tools to tell the brand story and drive social commerce. They can grow faster for less. We only work with 15% or so of the brands we speak to, but we try and add value in many other ways, this podcast being one of them. So if you are a brand that's interested in this, maybe a large consumer retail brand, ideally you're doing $20, $30 million as a minimum, and you're pretty advanced on social and you need to know what the next stage is, then please get in touch. Email me, paul@duel.tech. That is paul@duel.tech, or Google duel.tech.
This is it. You want to be where people's passions are. I mean, it's kind of marketing is basically, all right, how do I find out where people's attention is, and how do I make my brand sort of sneak in where their attention is? It used to be attention is sat watching TV for hours or listening to the radio or reading the newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, that placement for that weird cereal on Love Island, whose name completely escapes me, but this bloody box of purple cereal is everywhere, and you're like, it's just not subtle.
It's not subtle, but it's working. And it's like, well, if you're not watching TV anymore, apart from when you're watching Love Island, you're playing games, like the brands need to shift their budgets and their attention and understand it. And people are spending more time playing games than watching TV. Well, the new generation.
And I think they're on YouTube, they're playing games, they're on TikTok. They are not going through those traditional channels. And also all of those things in terms of actually ad spend and ROAS and all of those things are going to be cheaper. Because there's not as much competition. So you can, advertise on a game, you can get that early advantage and all of those things. So from a kind of return on the investment, it's going to be better.
Yeah, it's a huge area. Have you played around in it so far? Have you made any investments?
No, I haven't made any investments in. No. We have we've tested connected TV. We couldn't work out how to prove it works, but we tested it. And then, we're obviously on all of those other channels. I am a bit obsessed. My team particularly love it when I say, oh, why can't we sign up to these things? So we're, launching Snapchat, we're launching Pinterest, all of those other channels, because I think it's, to the earlier point, you've got to be where the customer is, right? And they're different people on different channels and they're doing different things.
100%. I think Snapchat's got some very interesting
I think it's
social
got real leg.
commerce potential that we've barely scratched the surface on. Because
I think Snapchat, because it's a more community thing, and people talk to each other on it. Even the map, even if you're in the map and you can see where the store is. I mean, there's some really obvious things on it that could be really monetized.
funny story on the gaming side of things, actually. Do you know one of the biggest brands in it is DHL, believe it or not, who sponsored a what was it? I think I messed the story, but they sponsored one of the teams, the famous team who became very big, and then DHL people are turning up wearing DHL t-shirts and stuff like that as a way of like backing their League of Legends teams. I think it is. I'm going to massacre the story, but we can fact check it later. And are you playing around in any other like immersive technologies in this? Is New Look or any of your previous roles, like how do you treat something that's coming out that's very nascent? Like let's take VR, let's take gaming, not that it's nascent, but like understanding how brands can be in that is relatively new. Like how do you approach this? Do you have like a test and learn methodology? Do you have a little bit of budget on the side? If we're going tactical, how would you recommend others do that?
As I said earlier, I think a test and learn methodology is really good. I always like to keep a little bit of budget to one side for all of these things. And I think you can kind of shave off a bit of budget for all of these tests if you really want to. And I think it's just about making it a MVP, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think where especially retailers need to get over that point of it doesn't have to be perfect, because it's very fast and it's going to change. And that content that you're producing really doesn't have to look as if it should be a print ad in Vogue. It just needs to sell the thing, and because someone's scrolling or doing something different with it.
It used to be that the CFO was the biggest blocker to marketing and ingenuity, but I think ironically it's the chief brand officer or a VP of brand that is holding the majority of retail brands back. You know, it's like, okay, we're gonna, you know, one of the guys on my teams always says, you know, what's the classic campaign for a luxury or for a perfume or something? It's just that we're going to get a celebrity and they're going to be riding through a desert topless on a horse, you know, and that's going to help sell some perfume. And it's just like, oh God, it's so boring. That doesn't work anymore, particularly not for your Gen Zs on it. So it's like, okay, cool, but they're like, oh, all our images have to be perfect, you know. Oh, we can never use those people because they aren't quite right, and I need to pre-approve everything that you post out to your own channels as an influencer partnership or whatever it is. It's holding people back. They just need to be a bit more like, let's just go for it.
I mean, I don't mind risk, and I'll just go for it. So I do have to temper that with the expectations of other people in the company. But I did have I'm going off piste, but I went to this thing and they were going on about the best advert ever. The Guinness ad with the horses is the best advert ever. And they were like congratulating themselves, saying how amazing this Guinness ad is of the horses. And it was at the time that Dove advert came out of that real girl who had got like an eating disorder. And after this bloke had like pitched it, and it was obviously my favourite thing because it was a load of men as well, that I just went up to him like, well, I don't think that's right. I don't think it did anything. I know it sold Guinness, but it's...
Did it?
Well, did it really? I mean,
maybe it got some awards at Cannes.
Exactly.
I don't think that really counts.
It was so self-congratulatory. But then it didn't go viral. Like that Dove ad, every single person I know sobbed their way through it. I'm not sure it made me buy soap, but it's made me remember it.
And that's, I mean, I think there's a whole
and
different area.
It's a very different way to your point of beautiful, polished, get a celebrity, do all of those things, or really engage with your community, really engage with what you're trying to do.
The human element of it. And it's about storytelling, and I do get that. But I do think there was this sort of heyday in the 90s when creative agencies were king, and like it's okay, cool, we're gonna spend $1 million on an ad to sell some bread or something like that, and then the creatives are gonna come in and stroke their chin. It just doesn't really work anymore. In a polo neck, and they go, and then they're all gonna go to Cannes and then pat each other in the back and say, oh, we won an award, and then everyone else who's actually like growing businesses are on the other side. I bet you didn't see Gymshark at Cannes this year. Like you didn't see Shein. Not that I'm advocating for them as a brand, but you know what I mean. They are growing like a weed. What have you done in the space? And then let's get tactical. Like, how did you get into it, and how can you recommend others start to get behind this?
So I think this, obviously AI is a buzzword, and there's generative AI, which is super exciting, and that's the thing that people need to get behind now. And there's machine learning, and machine learning has been around forever, and that is what everybody does all the time, whether you like it or not, or know about it or not. That is what most of your campaigns are based on from a paid perspective and all of those things. But I think that the sort of generative AI, where it's all of the suggestions and ChatGPT and all of those, others are available. There's some really exciting things about scale and volume and how you can just create an inordinate amount of content that's personalized. And I think testing into that is super exciting because you can then make it specific for what the person is actually searching for, wanting, the occasion. I think there's a lot of things around generative AI, image recognition, and then what that actually produces at the end. So if I'm going to a wedding, I want to wear a green dress, it's in Italy, show me. It can kind of then, if you are working with AI in a kind of smart way, you will then show up with that because of that kind of long search style query within the sort of premise of actually all of those different things. Does that make sense?
It does. So are you thinking that I'm just using a text query, but it's using that to really analyze the content of the other side of it? Or actually you thinking people are uploading their own content and then getting recommendations based on that?
Based on all of those things. And I think one of the things with it is I think it will amalgamate platforms, it'll amalgamate retailers, and it will kind of give you things in a very different way to be able to consume it. So if you Google something and you just get the shopping thing and you get all of those things, but you'll probably be able to have much more content that's relevant to what you want, harvested from all of those different things and showing it you in a context and making it easier to shop. So being channel agnostic, I would say.
So do you think that this is going to be, I mean, it seems to be, unfortunately, the way of the internet is that it's the winner takes most on most of the businesses. If you think about Meta, Google, Nvidia, like the Magnificent Seven, they are not only taking most of our data and they're taking most of the stock market at the moment. Do you think that there's going to be a world where a few brands are going to be better than the majority of brands because they have more data about you and what you like? And it means that in the way that Amazon, like we buy from Amazon from convenience, not for the love of the brand or anything like that necessarily. We buy because they know more about us and they have our data, and I can do one click and purchase and I know it's going to hit my door 24 hours later, which is, that's the ease side of things. Do you think there's a world where we'll start to get stuck in our way? Like, for example, New Look is my look. It's got all my data. It knows what I buy. And I say, I want this. It knows my size, my very specific size, and it can recommend a look without me having to worry about things.
I think it might go the opposite way.
Okay.
So I think if you are, I think people generally are, I would hope, rallying against those kind of bigger, massive companies, not New Look, obviously. But I think where people it should throw up more choice by the definition of having different things that you're after. That's my I don't know, I don't even know how it would work, but that would be my working assumption, is that the more data you've got, whether you're a small company or a big company, you've got so much data about the thing you sell, not necessarily about the customer. So the thing you sell has got actually tons of data. So how you then show up, I think, is a different way to actually knowing the customer. So kind of looking at it a different way.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And like matching them up, the right kind of things. Yeah, I'd be fascinated by this because I think that one of the problems with most of the recommendation engines is they don't actually have any data to do any recommendation. But if you can connect your social handles and then you can then get an AI to scan your last 10 posts, which is just like, oh, you go to the beach a bit, you like to do this, you like to go out at night, you wear that kind of stuff. It'd be like, here are like 5 outfits that are genuine, super tailored to you and your style and your lifestyle, and because it's your socials, like not a bad estimation of that.
No, exactly. So I think all of those things are super exciting, and how that kind of shows up.
Do you think, because I mean, ChatGPT being the LLM side of things, that's a conversational thing. We've had chatbots for years, but we now have chatbots at work. From a customer support side of things, Klarna famously got rid of 60% or something of their people, which is quite depressing, really, when you think about it. But it clearly shows that it's working from a support side of things. But do you see a chatbot world where it's kind of like conversational loyalty, where you're chatting with a brand and it's making recommendations of products and it knows about you?
Yeah, I think it would be cool, because I think people, as long as it's relevant, and as long as I think people want relevance rather than necessarily a human. I mean, the example of which I always give all the time is Liberties during the pandemic. They obviously had a chatbot, and you know, I knew it was a chatbot, but they had a picture of a woman. So I thought I was talking to this person, even though it's a chatbot. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and I know I'm not stupid, but it's kind of that. But it was serving me great content. It was giving me what I wanted to know, but it kind of had personalised it slightly. So I think as long as it's relevant and as long as you're getting the information back that you want, there's elements of both that are good.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I was playing around with ChatGPT, and I tried to build Duel. So I tried to basically break the company using ChatGPT, and I did a really surprisingly good. I got pretty damn close within an hour. We called it Julia, so I thought that would make sense, and it gave it the personification, and I just got it to have. I build a brand ambassador program and engage with me as a messaging product, and it was unbelievable. Like, trained it on just literally gave it a website of a brand that we work with, said you offer this, and it took all of the language, and it was everything it said was totally on point from the brand point of view, and it had all this banter, and it then started, like, it was one point when it asked me something and I said, oh, that's not right, and it commented back, oh, my glitter. And then it kind of goes, it was just this wonderful kind of camp language that came from nowhere. The persona that it built of its own regard was just so interesting and engaging, and you could do incentives, and you can upload things, and it could scan what you've uploaded. It was fantastic. So I can see so many different interactive points where brands currently don't live, where they can live, because actually the AI is able to be there. We talked a lot about your store associates. The inverse of that is also, how do you use those store associates in the digital worlds as well?
Yeah, exactly.
And so these are all very high level ideas, but if you want to get tactical and you were recommending to people that they were trying to figure out what works in the future from an AI perspective for their brand, they've got a little bit of budget, what would you recommend the next steps are?
I think, and it's going to sound really boring, I think a lot of it is data. I think making sure that you've got the foundations. So because all of this is based on the amount of information you've got about your products, if you're selling products. So if you are not describing those products correctly, I would be running them through every single thing to get as many different descriptions and all of that data, and having that data accessible to everything, I think is a really kind of key thing, because then that can be, it's just more efficient rather than just having like red dress. Is it long? Is it short? Has it got sleeves? So I think all of those things, and I know it's a really kind of a bit of a boring housekeeping thing, but I think it's super important. And then I think it's just about having fun and testing, but thinking of it from a customer viewpoint. I think there's a lot of things that can get really carried away with data and tech and all of those things, but actually, is this going to make it useful, and is this going to help sell something? So my example of this a lot of the time is avatars. Everybody thinks avatars are the most brilliant thing in the history of the world. They are obviously really, really good. But it's proven that if you are over a UK size 12, you don't want to see yourself, because you don't imagine yourself looking like that, and it actually decreases conversion. So you've got to kind of think about it from a practical point of view as well, because it's not baked beans. You're selling something that's aspirational, and you're selling something that is not necessarily a need, it's a want. So how do you do that within this kind of context and make it exciting?
What have you seen historically? We're looking to the future of this happens. I mean, you've been always at the forefront of technology throughout it. Like, what have been the pivotal moments that have shaped your approach to building these digital strategies? Here at New Look, Mint Velvet, Jigsaw, previously at Arcadia. Like, where have you seen this happen before, and what have you learned from it?
So I'm going to use Farfetch, even though I was there pre-IPO, so it was super exciting. And I think the main thing that I learned from that was this whole test and learn, and just see what happens, and have a hypothesis, have a testing criteria, and test it. And is it going to work or not? And that, not fear of failure. And I think that is such a key thing, that retailers are very risk averse, and they are very nervous about lots of things. Some things you don't want to kind of mess up, like, you need to kind of have the winter coat in the store in August. That's a non-negotiable, because that's when people are looking at winter coats. But how you actually advertise that winter coat, you can kind of change it. It doesn't, you can stop. You can change. You don't have to. It's not going to be there forever. So all of those things, I think that kind of risk piece and that testing and learning that was a fundamental mind shift for me for actually how you do things differently and how you then are curious about the new things and how they're going to work. And you're not going to be like, well, no, that's the way we've always done it, so we're going to do it like that.
So tell me about your level of OKRs.
So obviously, the objective and key result, but the traditional retailer is all about revenue. Obviously, that is the main thing. You do need to make money, but having it in an OKR framework just gets everybody on the bus so much easier, and you've got results that you're accountable for, and it makes everybody in the whole business accountable, and also gives them something that is common across teams. So when you're running it like a squad, you've got the same result, but the way to that result is very, very different, and it encourages collaboration.
That's huge. And was that because Farfetch was more of a startup, more of a techie company? And so they had adopted this mindset. And was it just culturally, if things went wrong, that's fine as long as you reported it? Okay, cool. And have you managed to implement that successfully in the retailers you've been to since, or is it always quite a challenge?
Sometimes it can be a challenge. Sometimes it can be a challenge in terms of the confidence to be able to do it. And I think when you're managing a team, I think empowering the team and giving them the confidence to test something and it work or not work, I think it's really beholden on you as a manager, because that's how the team's going to grow. And it's that trust piece. So I think, we're all adults. We all go to work to do the best job we possibly can do. And I think reiterating that to the teams, I know it's a really simple thing, makes a massive difference. You can imagine Philip Green versus Jose. I mean, they're two such, completely different things. So in Arcadia, you've got someone who's saying, no, we're going to stop all of our customer support because it costs money. But then people just moan on Facebook. It's like, so you've got to kind of think of it in the round.
I see. And I think that is the mix, is it? It's just like, if you just do the right thing, it tends to make a lot of sense. And look, there's also these innovations of like way we run teams, we work as organizations, that I think startups are easier because you don't have a legacy and you don't have historical ways of doing things that have been probably very successful. So that change piece is obviously quite difficult. And is it possible though?
I think it's totally possible.
And what do you think is the most fundamental thing that has to change for it to be possible for these, if you're coming from a legacy, or most retailers are? Trust in leaders, trust in the leader, trust in your team. Trust in your team.
Trust in your team to be able for them to execute anything.
Well, on that, I think that's a great way to end things. So one last piece for anyone who is sort of early in their career starting out on this, like what piece of advice would you give them?
Always be curious and always want to learn. I've done lots of different things in my career, and I didn't start out in marketing. I started out in merchandising, and I think just being really curious as to how to do different things.
Fantastic. Raine Peake, we will connect to you in the show notes, but thank you so much for your time. That's been fascinating.
Thanks, Paul.
If anyone wants to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
Oh, super easily on LinkedIn. I've got such an unusual name. No, it's really easy to find me.
Yeah, Raine, Raine. I think you are one of the only Raines that I know. So, and you're the only Raine in my phone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there we are. Raine Peake, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
That was another episode of Building Brand Advocacy, the world's top brand building podcast. To find out more about building brand advocacy and how this podcast is part of a bigger plan for our brand building cookbook, then make sure to search for Building Brand Advocacy in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found, and make sure that you click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Duel for sponsoring. To find out more, go to www.duel.tech, that's duel.tech. And on behalf of the team here at Building Brand Advocacy, thanks for listening.